So in this part of the lesson, we're going to do things that are what we call on the quadrant angles, okay? We're only going to use this method today for the quadrant angles. We're going to get more into this method in the next lesson for everything else, but we're going to try to relate everything else to triangles today. So just a few hits and answer, just in case this comes up in Delta Math or wherever I've got your homework coming from today, or WebAssign, I want you to be prepared for it. So when we're looking at these four coordinates on the unit circle, we know that the x coordinate is always, always, always cosine, and the y coordinate is always, always, always sine, okay? So that means that if I ask you for the sine of 90 or pi over 2, I know that it's that y coordinate 1. I know that the cosine of 90 or pi over 2 is the x coordinate 0. If I go to 180, so the 180 is, or pi, the y coordinate is 0, so the sine of 180 is 0, and the cosine of 180 is negative 1. I'm going to go to 270, which is this one on the bottom, or 3 pi over 2. So the sine would be the y value, which is negative 1, and the cosine would be the x value, which is 0. Then 360 or 0 radians or 2 pi, which is this one right here. The sine is the y coordinate is 0, and the cosine is the x coordinate, or 1. Now, we're going to use these relationships we had here to find the tangent, the cosecant, the secant, and the cotangent, because the only thing I can get from here is the cosine and the sine. And I know this seems a little bit strange right now, you just got to go with it. So the tangent we learned is the sine divided by the cosine. So I'm going to do the sine 1 divided by the cosine 0. Well, that is undefined, right? I cannot divide by 0. My paper explodes, right? So you have to write undefined really quick before your paper explodes. Then this one here for 180 would be 0 divided by negative 1, or just 0. This one here for 270 would be negative 1 divided by 0, and again, that is undefined, so write it quick before your paper explodes. And then 0 divided by 1, or just 0. I'm going to go do cotangent next, and then I'll come back and do cosecant and secant. Okay, so the cotangent would be the cosine divided by the sine, or the reciprocal of tangent. I could just flip all of those, but I'm going to go with cosine divided by sine. So I've got 0 divided by 1, which would be 0. And then I've got negative 1 divided by 0, which can't divide by 0, is undefined. Notice it's kind of the opposite of what's going on with tangent. And then on this one, I've got 0 divided by negative 1, which would be 0. And then on this one, I've got 1 divided by 0, which is undefined. All right, I'm going to go to cosecant. Cosecant I know is 1 divided by sine. So I'm going to take I'm going to put 1 over my sine value, which is just 1. Then I'm going to put 1 over 0, again, undefined. Okay. Then I am going to put negative 1 over 1, so it's negative 1. Then I'm going to put 1 over the 0, so again, undefined. All right, last one that we've got to deal with here is, I'll go with red, is secant. And secant is going to be 1 over cosine. So I'm going to look at the cosine. I'm going to go 1 over and look at the cosine value. So 1 divided by 0 would be undefined. And then I've got 1 divided by negative 1 is going to be negative 1. And then 1 divided by 0 is going to be undefined. And then 1 divided by 1 is just going to be 1.